Big win for Alabama on Saturday, and honestly, one of the best games I can remember Alabama playing in a long time. And they've had a lot of really good games, but they also had one really terrible game on Tuesday. So we got a lot to talk about. What team is this Alabama club? Christian Sykes and Clint Lamb and me right here on Cover Crimson, brought to you by mybookie.ag. Let's get the show started. But first, let me remind you that all right. Mark Sears looked like Mark Sears. Grant Nelson balled up. Christian, I'll bring you in first, man, because you're our expert on basketball around here. What a win for Alabama. Should I be worried about what happened against Ole Miss, or should I be excited about what I saw on Saturday?
I'd probably be more excited than worried if I were you. I think the Tuesday game, the loss was a combination of a lot of things. One, a lot of stuff kind of festering underneath the surface, which was turnovers, just lack of effort at times, lack of focus. And then on top of that, just an interesting stat for you guys. The last 7 opponents that Texas A&M has faced has lost their next game.
Wow.
Alabama was one of those opponents. So I think it might have also had to do with the fact that we played a 3-hour game on Saturday and then had to turn it around in 40 hours. So I think I'd be a little bit more excited than a little worried about this Alabama team.
Well, I mean, when you look at kind of what they were able to do in against Kentucky, as far as limiting turnovers, they were better on the boards, way better from the free throw line. What did they shoot, like low 70 percentile against Ole Miss? And it was, I don't know what the final numbers were, but I want to say it was in like the mid 80s against Kentucky. These feel like the kind of factors that's going to make the biggest difference, for Alabama basketball right now.
Yeah, Alabama shot 73% from the free throw line versus Ole Miss, and then 85.2% from the free throw line versus Kentucky. And it ended up being a huge difference. Kentucky only made 16 free throws. Alabama made 29 free throws and won by 5. So it was a big deal.
Yeah, look, I thought that just the resilience that those guys showed in this game, and I know that Nate Oates was talking about how these guys like to play on the road, or at least that seems to be the way. There's a lot of more rough road games, but you got to win at home too, So I heard him say that. I'm going, okay, I love this, obviously, because you got to win the national championship in gyms that aren't yours. But I thought that this team, and I don't know how they did it. I just thought they were just as tough as I've ever seen them play. The going after the loose balls, all the hard hat stuff. I love that part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the big thing for Alabama fans looking at this game and trying to take some takeaways was the effort and the attitude of the team. They didn't look like they were going to back down from Kentucky in a tough road environment early in the morning, 11 a.m. on a Saturday. For Alabama, and for Alabama fans, looking forward to the Vanderbilt game on Tuesday, which I guess we'll talk about in a little bit. You just get a little concerned that maybe this is a one-time thing, and you're hoping that potentially this is a stepping forward for Alabama and playing with that type of effort day in and day out.
Yeah, they got a couple of pretty key contributions. Chris Youngblood, just what he's been able to provide. I feel like the role players within this team, they're starting to figure some things out with how they're going to play them, where their strengths are. And I think overall, I mean, are you sensing something similar as far as does the team feel like it's kind of coming together as far as how they're going to operate moving forward, and kind of, people like Chris Youngblood and kind of getting him back from injury, kind of where he fits into that mix?
Yeah, I think Chris Youngblood's a great example. He went 2 of 8 versus Ole Miss from deep, and he's a 40% career 3-point shooter. And versus Kentucky, he went 2 of 3. And they weren't just 2 wide open shots. I mean, there was one timely shot late in the second half where Alabama needed a 3, and he hits one. And then on top of that, Aiden Holloway gives you 2 for 4 from 3. He had some foul trouble, which limited some of his minutes. And I think there's 2 big role players on this team that should get a lot of credit for what they did, which was LeBaron Philon. He went 3 of 5 from 3, and again, timely threes down the stretch when we needed them. And then on top of that, Mohamed Diabate, I know he fouled out, but he got 8 points, 8 rebounds in 15 minutes. And there were some key rebounds that he had that kind of calmed the storm when Kentucky was making their run late in the second half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also like that this team can play different styles. Like they can run with you, right? But they're big enough now where they can bang around and dominate the glass on both sides of the court. Dominate the glass, and I think this is a big difference from where they were last year. Not just the defensive glass, but the offensive glass too.
Absolutely. I think this is Nate Oates' second best rebounding team that he's had at Alabama. And at times especially when Alabama has struggled from the three so much like they have, the ability for them to get offensive rebounds, which, hold on just a second, let me pull this up. Their offensive rebound rate is 18th in the country at 37%. So 37% of their possessions, they're getting a rebound back and taking another shot. Their 2-point percentage inside the arc banging around, like you said, is second in the country at 60%. Alabama's able to kind of assert their dominance on the interior, which is kind of making up for the lackluster 3-point shooting that we've seen throughout the season so far.
Are you worried about the 3-point shooting, Christian? I mean, you lose, Latrell Wrightsell, and I think everybody knows, how important he was to that aspect of things. But when you look at the team in general, do you feel like it's like more of a slump kind of thing? Because they've got 3-point shooters, but and obviously they perform better in that category against Kentucky. Are you concerned about that at all, based off of how this team wants to operate and play?
It is a worry, and it's been a worry for a large part of the season. For when we've been talking about Alabama, the kind of upside thing that I'm seeing from Alabama, though, is in conference play they're shooting 34% from three, up from 32 on the season. For Alabama, I think that number probably needs to be around 35, 36%. So we're almost there. But it is a concern. Fortunately, it looks like it's getting a little bit better. Guys are getting a little bit more comfortable within their roles in order to make the shots that they need to make. And taking open shots when they get them is a big deal for Nate Oates and for this Alabama offense.
I wonder this, when you guys look at the Ole Miss game and you look at the Kentucky game, what did Ole Miss do that we had so much trouble dealing with? I felt like some of it was definitely an effort problem, but they had to be doing something right to be able to shut us down like that. And it takes one game like that to be out of the tournament.
Yeah, I think for Ole Miss, what they did so well is they caught us by surprise. I think that their speed kind of caught us by surprise, especially at the beginning of the game. They came out and jumped on Alabama as far as just causing 5 turnovers in the first 4 minutes. I think it was 5 of the first 6 possessions Alabama had a turnover. They were really doing really good job getting in the lanes, getting in the passing lanes. Chris Beard and Mark Adams did a really good job at scouting what we like to do offensively and playing to that. And on top of that, I think Alabama gave them a lot of easy turnovers. There was times where you're sitting on the wing and you're trying to throw a pass across the court, and instead of throwing it up in the air, you're throwing it directly at the Ole Miss defender. And I could make that catch in order to get a turnover. I think fatigue played a big factor. I think there was a little bit of Alabama looking forward to this Kentucky game. And maybe they were resting on their laurels, just thinking that they could go in and beat Ole Miss, which is a very good team. And obviously you can't.
Yeah, for me, kind of looking ahead, one of the big things that you notice is 3 of the last 4 games has been on the road. And with the league right now, it's as good as we've ever seen it, probably. Yeah. You get a couple of games, Vanderbilt at home, you get LSU at home, then you got to go to Mississippi State, but then you get Georgia at home. So 3 of the next 4 will be at home. What do you, as far as looking forward, and you can kind of start with Vanderbilt. I'm sure we're going to be talking a little bit more about them in depth, but with just the upcoming schedule, kind of what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for Alabama, I think that they played a very difficult opening stretch. Heck, you play Oklahoma, who isn't looking great in the league right now. I think they won their first game on Saturday, but they were undefeated when they came into Coleman. South Carolina is a very tough physical team. Former Alabama player Nick Pringle's on it. He's having a great season. And then you go to Texas A&M, who is a top 11 team in the country. Played Mississippi or Ole Miss, who's probably going to be ranked top 15 this week when the AP poll comes out. And then you go to Kentucky, which, I mean, Kentucky is a number 8 team in the country, and it's a blue blood program. But for Alabama, following that, you have Vanderbilt, LSU, Mississippi State on the road, tough game. Georgia at home, Arkansas, who hasn't won a game in league play yet, and then Texas, who either hasn't won a game or has only won one game in league play. For Alabama, these next 6 games are critical for if they want to compete for the SEC championship. You don't want to drop a game. Maybe drop one, which is the Mississippi State game, but you want to come out worst case 5-1 in these next 6 games.
How do you feel about that? I mean, like based off of where these games are at, who do you think would give Alabama the toughest game right now? Like, would it be Mississippi State because you're bringing them up as far as playing on the road? And they're playing. I mean, obviously they didn't play great. Who was against Auburn? They were missing Broom, and they still lose by what was it? I think 20 plus points. But I mean, they had a pretty nice bounce back against Ole Miss, kind of like Alabama, where you don't play well and then you bounce back. Would that probably be the game that you would circle as far as these upcoming?
That one or Georgia? The Georgia game. I mean, if you saw the Auburn result over the weekend, Georgia had every opportunity to beat Auburn. They beat Kentucky earlier this season at home. Fortunately for Alabama, it is at home. But those 2 games are the ones that give me the most worry. And then also Vanderbilt. I mean, heck, Vanderbilt just beat Tennessee at home. Their away splits aren't very good, but I mean, maybe that's a team that's riding on some momentum, and coming into Coleman is might be a trap game on Tuesday for Alabama.
It's crazy how good the conference is now. Like and I remember growing up with the ACC and Maryland, North Carolina, Duke, Wake Forest, Georgia Tech. And you would look through those conferences, and from top to bottom, I mean, they were solid, right? This is the best to me that the SEC's ever been. Now we'll find out in the tournament, right? We'll see if we can run through the tournament with these teams. But right now, man, it's just crazy, and it's a lot like football where you can't even really look at the schedule, Clint, and go, "Hey, man, we got these are dubs."
Yeah.
I mean, you think Tennessee thought they were going to lose to Vandy, and then
I didn't
Ole
think they were
Miss
going to lose
beats
to Ole
us?
Miss. Yeah, I mean, and
right.
Ole Miss was top 25, but just I thought Alabama matched up pretty well against them. I was obviously wrong, and there could be some other factors in there, but this entire schedule, based off of what they've already had. I mean, it was kind of like last year, and Christian, you could probably speak to this more than me, but it feels like the way that Nate Oates likes to schedule things really helps them around tournament time. So it's tough. You might end up dropping more games than you kind of want to as a fan, but it's just they feel very battle tested once it really starts to matter.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that Nate Oates always preaches when he talks about his schedule is he wants to make sure that they work out all the kinks that they need to. So when it comes to, winning time, that they can go and do that. I always tell people when people ask me, how far do you think Alabama can go? Anytime that Alabama wins that first game of a week, so whether that be the round of 64 or the Sweet 16 game, I think Alabama will always win the next game because it's impossible to scout Alabama on 2 days.
Wow.
And these guys are so prepared for any opponent because they've been thrown to the wolves the entire season. Now, does it make me upset when you have a 7-game stretch of North Carolina, Houston, Creighton, Purdue, Illinois, all of this, and you're just trying to survive? Yeah, it does. And does that make our non-conference win or our non-conference schedule or win-loss record look a little bit worse than probably what the team actually is? Absolutely. But when it comes to March and when it comes to the times that you need to win, you're going to trust Alabama more often than not.
Yeah, the other thing, too, for this team is that they're a little bit better to me with some guys out, right? Because the roster's getting smaller, and in basketball, it's really hard to win and play when you're not in the NBA playing every night, right? When you're playing a couple times a week to win with 11 guys. It feels like as the roster's gotten slimmer because of injuries, that they're getting better. I mean, do you think that's it, or do you think just the way it was going to work out anyway?
I think that the big thing for Alabama is their role players are figuring out what role they need to play. Like Chris Youngblood's figuring out where he fits within this offense. think the LeBaron Thielen has been figuring that out all season. Aiden Holloway's getting some confidence, figuring out that he needs to be the facilitator off the bench, that when Alabama needs a guy to go get a bucket, he can go get one. Darian Reed, when he's healthy, he's figuring out that he needs to be the guy that's attacking the rim, similar to like Mohamed Diabate, getting the rebounds, doing the kind of the dirty work. And then Mohamed Diabate, I think he's known what his role is, since last year. And I think he's just improving on that. So I think that I think maybe that the fact that Alabama's had to run with 9 the last 2 games has kind of helped the role players figure out their roles. I do think ultimately it's probably still going to settle on 10 when Darian Reed comes back.
Who's somebody, if you had to pick one guy, as far as you talk about roles and all those things, it's still early in the season. I mean, you're really, I guess at this point, reaching about the halfway point. But as far as like going forward, someone that you think is going to be a critical piece to Alabama's success or failure, I guess, if that's what it ends up being, like maybe that is not being, obviously a lot of people are going to talk about Grant Nelson. They're going to talk about Mark Sears, plenty of guys you can mention, but who's somebody that maybe people aren't talking about as much that you feel like as we start to get in the back half of the season, really going to need to have not necessarily a major role, but just a critical role, and will have a big impact on Alabama's win-loss record?
There's 2 guys, LeBaron Thielen, which isn't a guy that people aren't talking about. He goes 0-8 versus Ole Miss and kind of plays his way out of the game. And for Alabama to have him as for his defense and length that he provides and his finishing at the rim, we need that going down the stretch. Another guy is Cliff Amori. In SEC play, he's been excellent. He scored 12 points versus Kentucky, 5 of 7 from the field, getting to the free throw line, getting rebounds, and really affecting teams defensively. I think that allows Grant Nelson to play the way he did versus Kentucky when Cliff plays like that. And then maybe even Jaron Stevenson eventually figuring out some type of offensive game. If he can figure out the offensive side, I mean, the team's going to be insane. I mean, you just scored 102 points and he goes 1 for 4, right? Like if Jaron Stevenson could ever figure out how to shoot 33% from 3, this team would be, I mean, like it would be difficult to beat Alabama.
That's great. Well, we got to keep on going, man. I mean, don't get too confident because we don't want another Ole Miss to happen. But that game against Kentucky in that environment in this SEC is one of the best wins that you could have, and it timed out perfectly. We'll see how they rebound, guys. I want to remind you that we're brought to you by mybookie.ag. Use that promo code next round to double your initial deposit. That's next round at mybookie.ag. Lots of stuff going on right now. You got pro football running towards their big game. You got college football's big game. You got hockey and the NBA, all that stuff, basketball. So check it out, mybookie.ag. Any final thoughts, Clint?
First of all, Christian, appreciate you joining us, brother. Like this is kind of a just an initial discussion. Obviously, with kind of the highs and lows of a season. I think everybody got to witness that this past weekend, but this is going to be, we're keeping it kind of, around 20 minutes for this episode. It's going to be longer as we start, getting more into the season. But first of all, I just want to say, appreciate you joining us. It's going to be phenomenal. Tell people kind of where they can find you. Cause obviously and one thing about it, as far as the message board, the pregame kind of thoughts about Kentucky, thought it was a very well thought out. Thought it was kind of, I mean, you in a lot of ways you laid the blueprint, right? And they kind of executed on a lot of it. And then the post game recap stuff that you kind of came with later, thought that was also phenomenal. But where can other people find you as far as other places? I know you do the Crimson Crossover and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, join the boards, join the message boards. We're gonna have discussions during the games, do game threads. I think I missed it last week, on Saturday because I was just so focused on the game. But I'm gonna try to do pregame thoughts on the games for all games every single week. Do post-game thoughts as well, kind of seeing what Alabama did right, what Alabama did wrong. As far as what we do, obviously we're going to be doing this weekly. And then I do a podcast called Crimson Crossover. It's Crimson X over on Twitter. where we do a preview of the upcoming games for similar to how we're doing here, preview and then recapping. And then we do post-game spaces on my Twitter account, CT Sykes, SYKS 13. Basically similar to like a radio show immediately following the game, just so fans can come in and join the discussions, give their thoughts, and just really have a dialogue about what we just saw in the games. So
awesome.
Yeah, and I do so like that's perfect for, you know, if you're a fan, they get done with the game, or before a game, both like the pre and post immediate stuff. Christian will be doing those spaces. I think everybody should go listen and join in. They provide phenomenal basketball coverage, the best basketball coverage out there, in my opinion. And then, you know, when we hop on and talk, it'll be once a week. It'll be on Sundays, so we can kind of get both games. We can react, look ahead a little bit, and then also we'll give you a little bit of time to kind of collect your thoughts a little bit more. It won't be the immediate reaction, and we can kind of dive into some of this stuff a little bit more. So I think it's the perfect setup, and I appreciate you joining us, man. Mick, you got anything else, brother?
No, just reminding everybody of covercrimson.com. That's where you're at, Clint, all the time. I'm on there. We've got Stacy on there, your comments, message board, all the upcoming recruiting, which we're going to be keeping a close eye on. Check that out, covercrimson.com. Join us there, and then subscribe to the channel. You guys do a great job. Please keep sharing with your friends. And roll tide, everybody. We got a lot of playoff action with Bama guys all over the place. So go Ravens.